Okay, welcome everyone. We're going to get started here. Welcome to the first event of the Lab Innovation Networking Center. My name is Lindsay Maychek and I'll be your moderator here today. Before we officially kick off the program, just a few quick housekeeping items to get us started. Connection issues, we just recommend restarting Zoom or rejoining the webinar, or worst case, restarting your computer. That for the most part will alleviate any and all issues. If Zoom would go down in its totality, no worries, we will record all the speakers. We will share that and post that publicly on YouTube. And in the absolute worst case scenario, we will reschedule. We here like to have our contingency plans in line. Next up for our Zoom webinar Q&A. At the bottom, you'll see that functionality, the Q&A button at the bottom. So at any time throughout today's program, if you have a question, that's the place to let us know and ask it. You'll also be able to upvote other folks' questions. So during our Q&A panel, during the fireside chat, reverse pitches, the rest of the program, if you see a question that someone else asked and you like it, go ahead and upvote that so it ups to our top of our queue that we can answer it early. And then of course, for your audio settings, you can at any time adjust the output level so you can hear us clearly, loud and clear. Just use that settings button at the bottom of Zoom. So now it is time to officially kick off the program. Welcome to Open the Door to Innovation. This is the first event of the Lab Innovation Networking Center, and we are so thankful that you're choosing to spend your afternoon with us. And for today's event, we are thrilled, absolutely thrilled to have our first speaker and a first welcome, the Chief Commercialization Officer, Dr. Vanessa Chan from the US Department of Energy. She has spent the majority of her career helping companies commercialize their tech. Dr. Chan, we are so thankful to have you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. So my name is Vanessa Chan. I was just appointed the Chief Commercialization Officer and OTT Director under the new Biden-Harris administration. And thank you for allowing me to join you as my very first public appearance as CCO. And I'd like to share a few thoughts on the state of innovation and our priorities as the Office of Technology Transitions. In terms of my background, I come from a science background. I got my PhD from MIT in material science and engineering a couple of moons ago. And my research was focused on creating ceramic nanostructures from block copolymers. And I love that I now have a job and friends and colleagues like you where I can say that and you actually know what I'm talking about. My PhD was sponsored by IBM Almaden Research Center. So I actually had a chance to spend several summers in the incredible Bay Area ecosystem. And that experience really shaped my thinking around technology. And as such, I'm really excited that my first event is back to my scientific roots, back here in the Bay Area. So for the past several decades, I've been working with companies, helping them to take their R&D spend and commercialize their technologies more effectively. I did this as a partner at McKinsey & Company, where I co-led their innovation practice, as an angel investor, where I actually invested in a lot of technologies, and as a board member at big companies like UTC and some smaller startups. And you can see now why I feel like I really have won the lottery with this new job, since now I get to look under the hood of the DOE to see what we can bring to market. I really am a true science geek at heart, and what DOE does is really nothing short of astounding. The 4 labs that are joining us here today are part of a sprawling multi-billion-dollar research enterprise that has helped us understand our world in incredible ways and to deliver against an ambitious climate agenda. So for Sandia, right, we've seen them lower emissions for diesel engines through their ducted fuel injection technology, which could be retrofitted into existing diesel machines. This eliminates the soot, NOx trade-off, and gently reduces the diesel engine emissions. For Livermore, they've been working advancing hydrogen, storage and fuel technologies of hydrogen vehicles. Several creative collaborations with BMW over the years has really led to advances in the commercialization here. Berkeley Lab has improved building energy efficiency with novel duct sealing technology, and they've licensed it to several hundred companies. The deployment of this novel technology is thus a valuable tool for improving building energy efficiency and addressing a serious environmental issue. SLAC is discovering that by subjecting formerly useless perovskite materials to immense pressures in a diamond anvil cell, the crystals line up in a stable configuration with big implications for low-cost, efficient solar cells. So these labs really do it all, from MRI machines to stronger, lighter steel, from quantum dot displays to ultra-efficient solar panels. And of course, every lab has stood up and mobilized in the fight against COVID-19, lending their facilities, computing resources, and expertise to this critical national effort. At OTT, our job is to share those stories with the world so that these incredible discoveries make it to the marketplace in the products that we use and that we buy. We want to not just celebrate these incredible accomplishments, but we have to make sure they keep happening. That's what tech transition means to us, making sure all this science has a real world impact. Real world impact that includes developing and commercializing technologies that can provide jobs, ensure social justice, and arm us with new tools in the critical fight against climate change. It's an honor to support the national labs in this effort, and I hope today's event will help you understand the incredible things that can happen when America's innovators in the private sector team up with these world-class institutions in the public sector. Because they're only part of the innovation equation, if we really want to tackle the biggest challenges facing America and the planet, we need all of you, the innovation community, to help turn their research into reality. Later on, my Deputy Director Marcos will share with you how OTT can help with this. The Technology Commercialization Fund, the Lab Partnering Service, and the COVID-19 Technical Assistance Program are just to name a few things that we're working on. So thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to working together to make the world a better place through the incredible work that we can do with you in partnership with the DOE National Labs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Excellent words to kick off the program. As she said, Marcos is coming up later in the show, and we're going to hear now from the specific labs, but thank you so much for joining us. I'd now like to introduce Renee Sells. She's the managing partner with Sandia National Laboratories and has almost 20 years of business development and tech transfer experience. Renee, what is everyone in attendance going to gain when they leave today's program?
Thank you so much for the introduction, Lindsay. I really appreciate it. And before I go on to my slide, I just wanted to send a huge thank you to Dr. Chan. We're so excited that you're able to join us today and provide the opening comments. So let's see, bottom line up front. What we want you to leave after today's event are three things. So the first is we want you to leave with the knowledge on how to directly engage DOE's national laboratories. LINC wants to provide a one-stop shop. Well, you'll get a response to your needs. You will be able to interact with the lab personnel rep who will be able to listen to your needs and direct you to the right resources. After today's event, you'll receive a virtually delivered resource document. It'll contain all the contact information from the folks you'll hear from today, as well as links to the lab's capabilities, programs, and opportunities. And most importantly, we want you to leave with a deeper understanding of why and how our labs can benefit your business. So we have a full agenda today, starting with this quick introduction and welcome. You'll hear from FedTech, who'll talk about industry and federal lab collaborations and how those collaborations have fueled innovation. You'll hear a high-level LINC overview from high-ranking officials at each of our LINC labs. They'll talk about the lab's background, their mission, and how partnerships are a win-win for both industry and the labs. Next, of course, you'll hear from Gonzales Harsha from the Department of Energy, OTT, who will deliver our keynote address. Next, we'll switch gears and you'll get some unique insight and perspective from the business side of things. So Joe Pratt, who's the CEO of Golden Gate Emissions Marine, will share some of his experience working with the labs during the Fireside Chat. Next, you'll hear 4 reverse pitches from each of our LINC labs. Lab personnel will talk about specific technology or facilities within the quantum and clean tech spaces. And they're really meant to highlight tangible pathways for partnerships. We'll then end with a moderated Q&A panel with our tech transfer personnel from each of the labs, and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions at that time. So what is LINC? Again, it stands for Lab Innovation Networking Center. It's a collaborative effort from the 4 DOE national labs located in the Bay Area. This includes SLAC, Berkeley Lab, Sandia National Laboratories, and Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. And so our 4 labs want to provide you one front door to have access to our national labs. We want to help you easily navigate our resources. So we want to streamline and simplify access to our partnership opportunities, to our lab research and tech transfer personnel, to our facilities, to our capabilities, and to our intellectual property portfolio that's available for licensing. We'll also hold regular networking events like this one, so we stay engaged with the community. So our purpose is to link corporations, startups, and investors not only to our 4 labs, but to DOE's 17 lab complex and roughly $12 billion per year research and development portfolio. We really want to partner with you to help fuel innovation and help economic development. So you'll see here on the right is a map, and you'll see where our 4 labs are located. You'll also notice we have a LINC logo. We will have a physical presence in the Bay Area that the private sector can engage lab researchers and tech transfer personnel to talk about potential partnerships. This is in addition to our virtual presence that we currently have now. I just want to stress that although we're focused in the Bay Area, we can and do partner with industry across the United States. So here is our FedTech team. We know that to be successful for LINC to achieve our objectives, we need a partner. And so FedTech has a lot of experience working with startups, Fortune 500 companies, and federal organizations to really fuel innovation at that unique intersection for deep tech ventures. So you already heard from Lindsay Maychek. She'll moderate today's program. Will Dickson, who's a director at FedTech, will moderate our Fireside Chat with the CEO. And then next you'll hear from Jake Kramer. He's the managing partner at FedTech, and he will talk a little bit more about his team and set the stage for the rest of the program.
Thanks, Renee. And as Renee mentioned, Jake Kramer here. Really glad to see everybody here. First thing we want to do is just gauge what is your level of familiarity with labs. Have you worked with them before? So you should see a poll pop up right now. If you can just take a couple seconds to answer that. If you're not a business and you're just part of the federal lab, just click not applicable, and I'll give you a few seconds. Getting a lot of responses. Okay, starting to slow down. Okay, let's cut it. All right, let's see what our results are. Okay, not applicable. Let's move to the second one, which is never partnered, because I didn't know it was a possibility. That is great. Well, you are in the right spot today, because first, let's just take a step back and talk about what a federal lab is. So federal labs execute the U.S. scientific and technological missions. These missions range anywhere from energy, environmental stewardship, defense, national security, healthcare, and various other government missions. And in order to execute those missions, they create new technologies to strengthen the nation's technological superiority. And in order to do that, they need money, right? So there's $150 billion a year is allocated to these federal labs. And it's really just research and development every year. It's significant sum of money. It's over 300 plus labs in the US alone. Now, most people don't know you can actually leverage this technology from federal lab. And the truth is you can, and it's actually been the law for over 40 years now. And that was really due to 2 pivotal acts in 1980, which was a huge year for innovation. One, the Stevenson-Weidler Technology Innovation Act, the Bayh-Dole Act is the second one. I'm not going to go into all the details, but 3 key takeaways for these acts. The first one is that it mandated tech transfer in labs. So that means the labs are required to take technology out of the labs and make it available to other entities besides government labs. And the second point is that it allowed you or private sector partners, universities, nonprofits to license those rights to those technologies. And third, it allowed, if you were working with the lab in some kind of partnership, it allowed you to actually own that IP if you created it while working with a lab. So that's it at a very high level. But the interesting thing is from 1996 to 2015, the licensing activity that was spurred by the Bayh-Dole Act actually contributed close to $591 billion to the US gross domestic product. And it actually supported an estimated 4.2 million jobs in the US. So pretty significant there. Now, where do we come in here? So we, as FedTech, have created over 45 companies formed around federal lab technology. We've accelerated an additional 50 plus deep tech startups in partnership with the DOE and DOD. And this is just a map of where some of our companies and alumni are located. And the main takeaway here is it's doable to work with labs, creates a ton of value, and you should do it. So, and we'll tell you why too. And we sit in really the bridge between these three areas of businesses and entrepreneurs, mission-driven organizations, and breakthrough technologies. Now, what is in it for you? Well, for one, you have access to amazing facilities that require significant investment that you probably don't have on your own. And in those facilities, you can do substantial testing, have access to the world's foremost experts, and get access to funding. And this funding is not dilutive, which means you don't have to give up part of your company in order to get it. And we'll talk a lot more about that in this event and future events as well. And there's cutting edge technology, connections, and formal partnerships are all available. We'll do a deeper dive in that as well. And we've seen hundreds of companies work with labs, and it's really just beneficial. So I'm gonna kick it back over to Lindsay to walk through an overview of LINC.
Thanks, Jake. So we've heard from Renee about who LINC is, but we need to go up the chain and see the leadership, right? What are the labs and why do the labs want to work with you and work with industry from the highest levels of the labs, because that's the mission and that's important. So now let's go and meet one representative from each of the labs. So first, I'd like to start with Dr. Andy McElroy, the Associate Labs Director of Integrated Service Security Solutions at Sandia National Lab. Andy, hello, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I have a first question, and that's, of course, can you give everyone an overview of Sandia National Laboratories?
Well, thanks for having us, Lindsay. So Sandia is the largest of all the national labs. I don't think we're the best known. We are fairly big, though. We're about 14,000 employees overall, budget in the last fiscal year of just under $4 billion. We've got principal sites both in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and of course here in Livermore, where we're directly across the street from our partner in the national security enterprise, Lawrence Livermore National Labs, who you'll hear from later. Our job is to deliver national security solutions, and those can range from innovative energy technologies, like we heard Vanessa talk about earlier, to our core mission, which is maintaining the nuclear deterrent for the nation. And when we say that, it is important to remember that we don't just create, pie in the sky technologies. We actually have them go out in the field. And that picture there in the middle of the two gentlemen with the large orange object, that's a test object for one of our nuclear weapons. So these are things that actually get fielded. They serve the nation every day. And it really shows the strength of the national security laboratories, taking everything from cutting edge technology all the way into the field where it's used every day.
So Andy, I have to ask then next, so why from Sandia's perspective do you want to partner with industry?
There are a number of reasons. They're highlighted here on this slide. The least important one is the one on the right, in the sense that we have legislative drivers that make us do this. But that's really not why we do it. We do it because it really enhances our ability to deliver our mission. Whenever we work with industry, we always learn something. And that helps us be better at our broader missions. So it really helps us innovate. It helps us understand better how to get technologies into diverse markets. we see it as a win-win. We're able to maximize the public good of the tremendous investment the taxpayers made in the laboratory, and at the same time, help deliver our mission better. So for us, it's gratifying to see the impact the transitioning our technologies have, and it also helps us do our other work better.
So Andy, the next question is kind of an obvious one in the sense that we got to dig deep, and how do you leverage those facilities, and how can industry leverage those facilities, and how have they done it in the past?
Well, we've done a lot of things, and we highlight just a handful of them here. One of the innovations that's probably had the biggest impact, and that I'm guessing a number of the folks online here have directly benefited from, is the clean room. It's not well known, but Sandia actually invented the clean room, and the impact of that is hard to underestimate. All of our modern electronics and many other things depend on the very existence of that. If we fast forward to today, what are we getting out of that legacy? We are one of the leaders in quantum technology, and really taking ideas that used to fill a room and creating literally chip-sized quantum computers. You'll hear more about that innovation here in a little bit when one of the reverse pitches. In another area, we care a lot about hydrogen and how it's stored and how it's used as part of our core mission. And we've been able to broaden the impact of that into energy. And Joe Pratt helped develop those technologies as a Sandian, and now is out in the commercial sector. And you'll hear from him later about how we've gone from some fairly exotic national security things. You won't hear so much about that, but how we've now transitioned those technologies and created this new commercial fuel cell ferry concept that's now starting to actually get out in the water. And I'd be remiss if we didn't touch a little bit on COVID-19. A place where we've had particular impact there is around the development and application of these decontamination foams that have allowed us to clean up areas. And so, wide range of impacts. These are just a handful of them. It's really important for us to see our work, though, get out there and have impact and be important for the world.
Yes, thanks, Andy. Those are the ones that have been happening in the past, and of course, always seeking new ones in the future. So thank you for giving us Sandia's perspective. We appreciate it. And like Andy said, you'll be hearing more from our Fireside Chat, and then also again in a reverse pitch and some more specifics coming down the line. So thanks again, Andy. I'd now like to introduce Richard Rankin, the Director of the Innovation and Partnerships Office at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. So Rich, thank you so much for joining us. And I have to start the same place as I did before, and that is, of course, tell us more about Lawrence Livermore.
Thank you, Lindsay. To the audience, first, let me add my welcome to the LINC Open the Door to Innovation event. About Lawrence Livermore, we are the third largest of the national security laboratories. Founded in 1954, Lawrence Livermore is a $2.5 billion national security laboratory with a full spectrum of capabilities, from fundamental science to the design and fielding of products that serve our nation, similar to Sandia. Said in another way, our work diminishes the likelihood and impact of war, terrorism, and disasters through innovative application of cutting-edge science and technology. We make the world a safer place. Livermore was built on the principle of team science with a commitment to the generation of audacious ideas and to pushing the technological extremes. You can see on this chart some of our core competencies representing a tremendous diversity in our skill set and strategic commitment, ranging from nuclear and high density sciences to manufacturing, biosciences, earth sciences, and high-end computing. These skills both serve our nation and can benefit our partners in a wide variety of applications.
Great,
Thanks.
absolutely. And you have a lot at Lawrence Livermore, of course. So, how throughout time have businesses benefited from that diverse range of all the things that you guys do at Lawrence Livermore?
Thank you. Yes, companies benefit from partnering with Lawrence Livermore and other labs by gaining access to world-class scientific and engineering talent, research facilities, and cutting-edge technologies. We help our partners get to the next level with their technology and business needs. Some of our successes are shown here, and as you can see, they cover a wide variety of areas. For example, a lab employee started a company based on lab-developed software that has become the standard for simulating automobile crashes in lieu of crash testing. This has been credited with significant, and I mean billions of dollars of cost savings for the automobile industry. In another case, our lab employees started a company to use, based on a technical challenge from industry, to use laser energy to peen the surface of aircraft turbine blades. That resulted in jet engines that are significantly increased in their lifetime and service lifetime and in safety margins. And particularly relevant now, in addition to providing the basis for much of the PCR technology used in detection of COVID-19, the microbial detection array, which was developed as a powerful microarray diagnostic technology developed as a rapid low-cost diagnostic for more than 12,000 bacteria, viruses, and fungi, is being modified for use in detecting the SARS-CoV-2 virus. There are many others across a wide span of applications and functions. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots ranging. And so that leads me to my last question. We heard Dr. Chan mention this in her opening remarks, and it seems to be that's the theme of this first Lab Innovation Networking Center event, is that it's a win-win. It's a win for the labs. It's a win for industry when they're partnering up. So Richard, in your experience, why do people describe that as a win-win?
So again, from a laboratory perspective, to fulfill our mission, we must work at the edge of many new areas simultaneously. Some examples are shown on this slide. Partnerships are very important to lab success. We need to partner. No one institution or a group of institutions can be at the top of the game in every field. To that end, for example, the lab established with Sandia National Laboratories the Livermore Valley Open Campus to host partnerships in an open environment, allowing greater access to the talent, technology, and facilities at the two labs. LL&L has been called a business-friendly technology giant. The lab welcomes partnerships with industry because we want to work with the best the world has to offer. We learn things from these collaborations, we put them to use in our national security missions, and the companies can commercialize the technologies are created. That's win-win.
Perfect, thanks,
Science
Richard.
and technology on a mission. Go to the next slide. Science and technology on a mission is the hallmark of Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, and thank you.
Yes, thank you, Richard. Thank you so much. Science and technology on a mission. I know that we have some of the best and brightest in the audience tonight. So thanks for watching, for everybody at home to listening in. You're going to have an opportunity, and we're going to make sure you have a resource guide so that you can connect with Richard's team at Lawrence Livermore to figure out the best way to collaborate. So that's coming up. And now we are going to meet Horst Simon from Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. Horst is the Deputy Director of Research and internationally recognized expert in computer science and applied mathematics. So Horst, welcome. And why don't you tell everybody at home about Berkeley Lab in detail here?
Thank you, Lindsay, and good afternoon. A great pleasure to be here. And Berkeley Lab is this year celebrating 90th anniversary. So we're looking back on a long and distinguished history in scientific discovery, measured, for example, on the 14 Nobel Prizes that our scientists have won. Most recently, Jennifer Doudna for the CRISPR-Cas9 discovery. That was a 2020 Nobel Prize. And this is, in a sense, significant for us that we are a basic science lab fostering scientific discovery, but with an orientation towards the mission for energy environment solutions to difficult problems. Berkeley Lab is now a $1 billion plus lab, 1.1 billion actually to be precise. So we are actually, if you look at it and compare us to the other University of California campuses, for example, the largest physical sciences research entity in the University of California system. The lab has 6 different scientific areas: biosciences, computing sciences, energy technology, earth and environment, and physical sciences. And in a multi-area collaborations, we are strengthening multidisciplinary work and team sciences as our hallmarks of how we conduct our day-to-day research work.
Great, thanks, Horace. So you heard me ask Andy and Rich about certain ways. So I'm going to put a little spin on that question for you. And I want to know at Berkeley, what's considered a hidden gem for business? So what's something that they may not be aware of or know? What's the hidden gem for Berkeley Lab and for industry?
Thank you, Lindsay. I think our hidden gems are these national user facilities. These are scientific facilities that the Department of Energy is providing for pretty much anybody who has a challenging and applicable science problem to access. So you can submit an application and get access to these user facilities. So they are pictured here. There's the Advanced Light Source, the Joint Genome Institute, the NERSC Supercomputing Center, the Molecular Foundry, and the Energy Sciences Network. And these facilities work often very closely with industry. There are small companies that work with the Molecular Foundry and are based at the Molecular Foundry. We have some discoveries of electrochromic windows that were tested out in the Foundry. At the Advanced Light Source, we're working with both pharmaceutical companies as well as in materials discovery. And some of the early synchrotron work to discover the structure of the COVID-19 virus was done at the Advanced Light Source in collaboration with researchers, but we also work with pharma companies there. And our supercomputing center is generally accessible for all large-scale computational tasks. And we have worked in high-performance computing for manufacturing, for example, with the paper industry to find a more efficient process to squeeze water out of wet paper, which sounds very mundane, but which is a very challenging computational modeling problem. So you see that these facilities are available and accessible for industry if they solve problems that are of interest within the mission space of the Department of Energy.
Yes, and we can see here too, Berkeley Lab's priorities too that flow from those hidden gems and that industry can engage with. So Horace, my last question for you, and this is a big picture question. So why does Berkeley, from your perspective, want all these businesses to take advantage of these gems and partner with you?
I think there are always, this is a two-sided story, a win-win, as we've heard several times. The win for us is that industries have the most important challenges, and they often lead to very important fundamental science questions that our scientists like to work about, but it's also part of our mission, as was explained earlier, to make these facilities and our expertise available to industry and strengthen economic competitiveness. So we're looking at multiple ways to leverage the technology out into the market. And I'd like to point out, since Vanessa was mentioning building technologies, you see here a picture of Flex Lab. That's a facility that can be used in collaboration with industry to explore building technologies and explore, for example, in this example that's mentioned here, the integration that now has become very popular, of course, Tesla Powerwalls. The early concepts were tested in this building, how to combine solar and storage technology in this building. Then what I also want to point out is a strength of the lab is in biosciences, and we're currently working with two facilities, the Advanced Biofuels Process Development Unit and the Agile Biofoundry, to leverage synthetic biology into industry and see how synthetic biology can impact agriculture and food production, but also how bioproducts can replace oil, that is fossil fuel derivative products in chemistry and in cosmetics. So I would like to point out that there are two other things. So you'll hear later on from Noel Bakhtian about a big initiative we have in energy storage, where we're reaching out with industry. And I also want to make a forward pointer to my good colleague Rick Muller from Sandia. We're working very closely with Sandia on quantum information sciences, and that's another area of big interest, where the fundamental science that we're doing in the lab will have immediate impact in changing the future of American economy. And I believe in particular that the circular bioeconomy and QIS are areas where the Bay Area has already strong fundamental investments, where the contributions of the national labs will help us to foster new economic directions.
Yes, Horst, thank you so much for providing Berkeley Lab's perspective. Lots happening. And like Horst said, you're going to be able to hear both Noel and Rick reverse pitch later in today's program. So stay tuned for that. Just one friendly reminder before we head into our SLAC speaker, the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen is how the best way to communicate with all the panelists. Ask your questions about links, we'll provide them, but that Q&A feature is the best way to reach us instead of that chat. So keep using that Q&A. We see all of them, we will respond to them, but that's the best way to reach us. So now let's head and let's meet Dr. Steve Eglash from the Applied Energy Division and the Director of the Applied Energy Division at SLAC National Accelerator Laboratory. So Steve, thank you so much for joining us. And of course, I'm always going to start, tell us a little bit more about SLAC.
Thanks, Lindsay. SLAC's managed by and is part of Stanford University. In fact, while a lot of the national labs are managed by universities, we're the only one that's part of a university, and that means that it's particularly easy for us to bring Stanford faculty and students into SLAC to work with you along with our scientific staff. We're located on Sand Hill Road in Menlo Park, and if you've driven up and down Interstate 280, you've seen the 2-mile-long linear accelerator. SLAC began in the 1960s doing particle physics research with that accelerator, but today we do research across a full spectrum of programs, including physics, chemistry, biology, energy, quantum information science, and more. One element of SLAC is our user facilities that give people access to sophisticated techniques like X-ray synchrotron radiation, the X-ray free electron laser, and cryogenic electron microscopy. We have strong connections with industry, 1,600 employees, and an annual budget of about $600 million.
Thanks, Steve. So, you know, everyone knows, or especially in the area, sees the accelerator, and from a perspective may not know that there's these other opportunities for SLAC to appeal to business. So could you provide some further details about how and just how diverse your portfolio is that people might not necessarily expect or know about?
Let me give you a few examples. We have a major program in battery research spanning from battery materials synthesis through characterization of materials, building batteries, and one of the world's leading programs in battery informatics, where we charge and discharge large numbers of batteries and use machine learning and AI to predict things like battery lifetime or optimize things like fast charging algorithms. We have a major program in catalysis that's related to production of hydrogen and renewable fuels. Material science and chemistry are going to be the enabling technologies of a lot of solutions, and I'm sure materials and chemistry are important to many of you in the audience today. We have a program on materials discovery where we use large and heterogeneous data sets to search for a much wider array of materials than would be possible otherwise, and then do high throughput experiments to synthesize fractions of those materials and study them. We've applied this to things as diverse as new thermoelectric materials and new hard and wear-resistant coatings. You'll hear later on in today's event more about our work on materials and devices for quantum information systems. This work spans our work in our clean room, our work on fundamental physics and materials, and our work on new computing algorithms enabled by that. Other work going on includes photovoltaics, water desalination, advanced manufacturing technologies like 3D printing, and much, much more. And as was mentioned earlier, we're able to launch new programs that bring together diverse skill sets. So like all of the national labs, we started up a number of programs to help fight COVID in areas of virology, N95 mask materials, ventilators, and so on. We also have quite a large program in electric grid modernization, and my group has a major laboratory for the development of new algorithms and hardware for the modern electric grid.
Great, and that's absolutely one of the benefits of LINC and of the SLAC Partnership Office is that for any industry at home, you're going to be able to figure out exactly where and who you need to speak to get these partnerships started. So that, of course, leads me to the last question for you, Steve. And this is the theme throughout the entire day, is the why and the how. So why do companies partner with SLAC?
We're deeply collaborative and entrepreneurial. Companies will come to us because they want to get access to experts with deep know-how. We have a commitment to translational research, tech transfer, and solving real-world problems. One thing that companies like about working with the national labs is that we're trusted, honest brokers. Unlike a vendor or a consultant, we have no agenda. We're not selling anything. Our commitment is to the nation, science, and our interaction with you. And as you'll hear later today, we have flexible structures for contracting and IP and publication and so on. Sometimes companies come to us with a specific request where they know exactly what they want. Sometimes companies want our help to see over the horizon and anticipate new opportunities or challenges. Sometimes companies want access to the most advanced technology, billion-dollar class facilities that they could never establish on their own. We work with big companies that want to be agile and entrepreneurial. For instance, we're working with an oil and gas company developing a business in new energy technologies. We also work with startups that want access to sophisticated capabilities and capital-intensive technologies. For example, we're working with a transportation company in the electric vehicle space that wants advanced information on how to optimize batteries.
Great, thanks, Steve. Great examples there. So your company could be partnering, it could be next step. And again, we'll have that moderated Q&A with Steve. He'll be back on that panel where you can ask some of your questions directly. So thank you so much to all of those that joined us for our LINC overview section of the event. We appreciate the insight, and you'll get to hear more from each of the labs later in the show today when we go through and see some reverse pitches. And that's something that I'm going to guess a lot of you haven't seen before. So stay tuned for that. And now I'm really excited and thrilled to announce our keynote speaker. He's the Principal Deputy Director at the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Technology Transitions, Marcos Gonzales Harsha. Marcos's office works to increase awareness of partnership opportunities for the private sector. That's you all at home. And that's exactly what Marcos is going to be speaking to and about today. So Marcos, welcome, and please take it away.
Thanks so much, Lindsay. And I'll first just point out that I want to thank Renee and Mary Monson from Sandia National Labs and the full LINC team, certainly FedTech as well, for putting this on. It's a fantastic event. Also, I'll note that I'm also especially grateful because this gives me a chance to actually dress up and put on my work clothes, which is rare. I'll just share. I sent a selfie a short while ago to my partner, and her response was a horrified face emoji, followed by OMG. So that's what we've come to. And you'll also notice that I've grown a beard since the intro photo. So that is the COVID world we're in. But I'm really grateful to be here with you all today and talk to you a little bit about what OTT has to offer as a DOE-wide entity, and also celebrate a little bit of what this community here in the Bay Area is doing. So my first slide here, just wanted to share, let's see if this works. Here we go. This is a little bit busy. The takeaway really is a number that's not on this slide. And that's if you add in all these programs doing their exciting R&D in various sectors, technology portfolios, various mission spaces, all the labs, the tens of thousands, actually over 100,000 people that are working, PhDs, top scientists, researchers, engineers at these labs, production facilities and sites across the DOE system. It's a $20 billion portfolio. There's really nothing like it in the world. That number's not on here, but that is the research investment we're talking about up top. And it's just, there's a lot of stuff there. And that's a theme I'll come back to because we're going to help you navigate all that. But this $20 billion, what does it support? It supports technology, tens of thousands of patents, invention disclosures, a lot of great publications, of course, academic research papers. It's also supporting the people. This is always what it comes down to. We have some of the nation's and the world's top scientists and experts in their fields at our national labs. And it's also supporting premier, one-of-a-kind or few-of-a-kind facilities. And you've heard from our 4 lab leaders in the previous half an hour or so about some of those. So the topic of battery has come, battery chemistries and battery technologies come up. There is a value proposition from every one of the 4 labs you've heard from today for why you would want to work with them to develop your battery technology. I mean, each one has something to offer, and not that all will have something to offer for your particular need or goal or your technology or challenge, whatever hurdle you're trying to clear. But if you look across the lab system, across these labs, everyone's going to have something for you. So again, coming back to the theme, a lot of money, a lot of labs, a lot of great activity, technology, people, facilities. Where do you start? How do you navigate this? And this map, sorry, is just to emphasize the geographic spread. And I will note that this map looked good to me as an East Coaster, but when I really focused in on the West Coast for the first time, since I was going to be addressing this LINC community, I noticed that it's really not quite right. And I just wanted to clarify that SLAC is not in Santa Barbara and Livermore and Sandia are not in Sacramento. Google Maps told me that that's where they currently are located. These are all Bay Area labs. And though it is a national lab system, I really just want to underline, and you can see by the concentration of flags over on the West Coast, you're in one of the richest communities, top tier labs. It's just a great concentration of innovation, which everyone knows, venture capital, which everyone knows, but also the federal presence there and footprint is really significant. So a lot of great partners to work with through the national lab system there in the California Bay Area region. And LINC is a great door to that. Okay, so let me just tell you a little bit about some of the tools that we offer through the Tech Transitions Office. The first here is the Lab Partnering Service. There's a web link at the bottom. Invite you to all go check it out. And this has actually been around for a few years now. And the real takeaway I'd say up front is if you are looking at that map of the national labs and you heard the numbers, $20 billion, tens of thousands of researchers around the lab system, the question is, where do you start? How do you even navigate that? It's a bit forbidding in a way, quite imposing. So the Lab Partnering Service is your friend and ally. The idea here is to provide a front door to the DOE's technologies, patents and IP, researchers, and research facilities. And it's quite simple. You can keyword search. You can type in a battery, you can type in energy storage or a specific battery chemistry, and it will pop up relevant patents, relevant experts who've identified that, self-identified that as an area where they have expertise, and even some research facilities or testing facilities where you might be able to go and validate some of your own technology. We also have added in here, it's not listed, but success stories, which is always great to see and quite inspiring. Folks who have worked with the labs in the past and developed and cultivated something that they've then taken to market successfully. So keyword search, and you are welcome to go check this site. And importantly, there's more to it. We very recently added the Solutions Exchange. And this answers the question of, okay, I'm looking at the Lab Partnering Service. I'm still overwhelmed. I typed in energy storage and I got hundreds of researchers. So how about I have a very specific technical question. I'm not really sure who to direct it to. Can I submit it somewhere and have the lab system vet it and provide a compiled set of responses, whether the solution they might be offering is some IP or working with the researchers through a cooperative research agreement or come test something out at one of our facilities. You can now submit these as a fairly new tool, just a few months old, through the Solutions Exchange. Again, you've got the link up there in the top left. And it's a fairly simple web form. There is some initial vetting. It's not guaranteed that every inquiry will receive a response. Frankly, we don't have that problem. We'd like to drive more business to this, so we're encouraging people to submit inquiries. If it is your 6th grader doing a book report, hopefully we'll figure that out and not send that inquiry out to the National Lab System. But all of you with technical challenges, please give this a shot, submit inquiries, and we'll, within 2 weeks, that's the commitment, provide a compiled response from our national labs that feel that they have a value proposition that they'd like to offer up. And I'm seeing down there that someone sent an inquiry and no one responded. So I'm, after this, going to go, this is in the Q&A or chat, and I'm going to go in and check the inbox. Hopefully that's an inquiry from very recently. If not, then there may be an issue we need to look into. So that's the Solutions Exchange. The next item I want to point out, really emphasize something that's unique about the OTT mission. There are huge behemoths in the Department of Energy funding major technology areas, solar, geothermal, wind, each has its own office with tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of investment. What OTT, though much smaller in scale financially, has to offer is a cross-cutting mission. And this is actually a really important point about the DOE lab system. The word energy obviously is in our name, but it really goes, the extent of the technology use cases, the relevant fields of use for the IP we're developing extend way beyond the energy sector. We're all about energy, we're trying to encourage it, but there are many outcomes that you can look at in the defense space and in the space, agriculture. A lot of our technology is so foundational and fundamental, it can be applied in many different application areas. So one of the things that came and our mission allows us to look at commercialization opportunities across the board, energy and beyond. So CTAP, in response to the COVID crisis and pandemic that we're all facing, we pulled together a quick program, again, website right there, and it allows you to connect with a national lab and have one of the experts in the lab basically pick up the phone and serve as a consultant, provide technical assistance for up to 40 hours. It needs to be projectized. It's not just talking for 40 hours. There needs to be some activity, but this is not about developing IP. It's not an in-depth cooperative research agreement. This is very much about providing a consultative service from an expert. And you can be covering things from diagnostics, manufacturing, virology, you know, all sorts of stuff that folks have already mentioned prior to my joining here through our national lab experts. So CTAP is open for business. We've got funding placed at a number of labs. There's a smattering there of some of the projects that we're supporting. But again, open for business, and it's frankly free. As long as it's approved, you don't have to pay anything. You just get time with our researchers. Okay, moving along here, the Tech Commercialization Fund. This one, I'm really hoping that this event itself, and certainly the discussions that follow, will seed some potential partnerships. Now, if you see a real potential and the lab sees a real potential, there are various ways to fund your work. One of those ways that our office supports is through this Tech Commercialization Fund. This is something that the lab actually has to apply for. The labs get the money, but what it does is cover the cost of their activity to pursue research and technology development in partnership with a private sector entity. That's all of you. The labs cannot tap into this funding without the private sector entity saying, we're gonna participate. And by the way, that cost share, that financial cost share, it is a requirement, but it can be cash. More often it's in kind. So it's just doing joint research together. Through this program, you get to unlock the national lab side effectively for free, as long as you're partnering kind of hand in hand with them. So Tech Commercialization Fund has an annual cycle. It's not open currently. We're reviewing applications, but in the months to come, it's something to look for. I'm just going to end with the comment. First of all, we are a front door to the DOE. Please do reach out. Questions, comments, concerns. We're here to help you more easily access the lab system and all the rich innovation offerings it has. And I did just want to say that it's very clear with the new administration coming in, even a recent executive order that's now come out that's driving some of our early thinking here in the department. Climate change is a driver, but just as much, often tagged on to the same sentence right after it, is the job creation that can come with it. The government's doing R&D. We're obviously employing researchers, but really you all are the Rosetta Stone that converts and translates the federal R&D mission into jobs and impact and economic impact. So we need you to move our technology out into the marketplace, and we're here to make it easier for you to do that. So thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm glad all of you were able to join today, and stay tuned for more great content from our national lab experts. Thanks.
Thanks, Marcos. We appreciate you taking the time to share all those very specific, tangible things that people can do at home. At the end of today's program, we are going to give you a one-page sheet that includes all of those links directly on them, so you have easy access to find exactly what you need. We're also posting them in the Q&A chat, so that is coming your way. But thank you again for sharing all those great items with everyone in attendance today. So now it's the time that we get to deep dive with an actual business in our fireside chat. Will Dickson, my colleague at FedTech, will be hosting today's conversation. Will is the director of FedTech's custom accelerator programs, and he has helped build custom accelerators for the DoD and the DOE. worked with 40+ deep tech ventures. He spent some time as an engineer and helped launch big pickup trucks at General Motors. He has lived a life and he wanted me to note this, he has played basketball with Tibetan monks along the way on the Tibetan plateau. So he has lived a life. He's very excited to join in this fireside chat today. And joining him today is Joe Pratt, the CEO and CTO of Golden Gate's Emission Marine. They're going to deep dive into his experience and learn how he's successfully transferred technology. So Will, Joe, I leave the stage to you. Thank you guys, and I'm looking forward to hearing your conversation.
Awesome. Lindsay, thanks so much for that introduction. Excited to be here today. And I think we wanted to include this fireside chat for everybody because this is kind of telling the boots on the ground story of what it's like to work with the lab, a little bit more human interaction from the technology side. So Joe, I'll start and ask you, can you just give us a little bit of your background? Because I think your career is pretty unique and provides a good kind of perspective as we go through this fireside.
Yeah, sure, Will, and thanks for having me. This is been really looking forward to this conversation, and I'll just start out giving a little introduction here. I'm an engineer at heart. Went to school and got my engineering degree. Went to work in industry for a little bit, doing natural gas power plants on the East Coast, and then went back to school, got my master's and doctorate where I focused on hydrogen and fuel cell technology. The whole time I was thinking I wanted to be a professor, so that was the track I was on. Got that job, did it for about 1.5 years and realized I actually don't want to be a professor. It's not like in the movies. So I went and got a job, thankfully, at Sandia National Labs in 2010 and focused on research in the hydrogen space for about 8 years. During that time, I worked on many different types of projects and different technologies, really all in the energy and hydrogen and fuel cell space. I was more on the sort of the market end of things. So not a lot of fundamental research is not what I did, but I worked with the DOE's Fuel Cell Technology Office and Market Transformation Program, which is kind of the very end of the line. Once the technologies are developed and figuring out how to get those into the market, break down the market barriers for successful transitions out of the lab. Through that work, I focused about half my time at the last few years, about half my time on hydrogen fueling stations for automobiles, and the other half of my time on hydrogen fuel cell power for marine, which was something that not many people had looked at before. And through that work, met hundreds of people out in industry, finding all kinds of roles, technology roles, customer roles, and finding there was a real desire to use this technology, but there was no company that was able to provide it. All the information and the expertise was still kind of in the labs at that time. So that's when I said, we've got an opportunity here, and we applied for a grant from the state of California Air Resources Board and got that. And that was the catalyst for me leaving the lab, starting up this company to build the world's first commercial hydrogen fuel cell powered ferry. That's the genesis of the company. And now we're really looking at expanding outside of marine and becoming more of a hydrogen technology company going forward. So I'm really excited. This company was built out of the lab and the lab knowledge, and I owe a lot to that opportunity.
Very neat. And I think I was pumped to get to know you beforehand too, because at FedTech, we love working with technical founders. We work with technical founders and technical teams all the time. And we think it's a really powerful journey you take when you go from being a technical founder to really leading a company. And so I'd love you to share a little bit of your journey with Golden Gate Zero Emission Marine. But first, for the other engineers out there, what is kind of that core technical secret sauce? Because if you can share that with us a little bit, we believe a lot of the most robust businesses in the United States are built around some core technical secret sauce. Can you walk us through like maybe one level deeper into the onion of that the hydrogen technology that's going to power these next generation ferries?
Yeah, it's actually interesting you asked that question, because I was just talking with one of my colleagues today, co-owners in the business. we're a little bit unique in that our secret sauce is our knowledge. We don't have a really deep, today, a really deep technical innovation, but we know how to put it together. We know where to get it. We know the issues that need to be solved and how to solve them. And that, from a company perspective, you talk about a moat, that doesn't sound very good because somebody can catch up to that. But we do have some secret sauces in development and patent pendings on those, but I'm not going to get into those.
Oh, there's only a few hundred people listening here. No one will. We won't share anything. Don't worry. I wonder if you kind of go back in time, because I remember you told me actually how you got this idea to leave your role at Sandia and start a business was actually from industry reaching out to you while you were fully employed at Sandia. How do you know how the owner of that company was the Fleet Services in the Bay Area, I believe? How did he find you guys? How did a small business operator of ferries in California reach out to you guys and say, hey, can you guys help me with this? And can you help me, do clean tech for my fleet?
Yeah, it's kind of a fun story. So his name's Tom Escher, and he's the owner of a local tour boat company called the Red and White Fleet in San Francisco Bay. He's a visionary, is how I would describe him in one word. So he was interested in going to zero pollution for his fleet of vessels. And just through, I don't know what channels, but he got on a webinar put on by the Department of Energy, Fuel Cell Technology Office. And in that webinar, they talked about, along with other projects, one of the projects I was doing in Hawaii at the time about getting fuel cell power on the dock. So he saw that and he started thinking, hey, could I use fuel cells to power my boat? And he didn't really even know what they were, but he knew they were zero pollution. So the way he tells it is he sent an email to DOE, just the webinar host, and they connected him to me. They said, hey, we got this email from this guy in San Francisco. You're really the only guy in the labs who's doing anything that combines fuel cells with marine. So can you talk to him? So I said, sure. And at that time, I was getting a call maybe once a month from people with an idea to use a fuel cell. They'd say, hey, I have this, I want to use a fuel cell for this. And I'd say, that sounds great. Let's talk about it. And then by the time we get to price, they're like, oh, forget it. So I was pretty upfront with Tom, and I said, why do you want to use a fuel cell? He said, well, I want something cleaner. And I said, Tom, in the maritime world, a lot of people are looking at liquefied natural gas. That's cleaner than diesel, and you should probably just look at that. And he stops me. He says, Joe, you don't understand. I don't want to reduce pollution. I want zero pollution. And I said, okay, well, then maybe we can talk. But I don't think we can power a whole ferry with a fuel cell. The only thing that's been done is a car. And instead of saying, oh, okay, forget it, he said, well, why not? Right? So then my colleague and I, Lenny Klebanoff, who's still at Sandia, started penciling it out just for fun on the back of a napkin. And we found, holy cow, this might actually work. So that's kind of how it all started from that one conversation.
Awesome. And I think I love the last few minutes we have here. Let's jump into the nitty gritty of what it's like to work with the lab. And so number one, you shared with me your startup since you started has gone up and down in terms of funding, employees. If you were to recommend to a startup out there, right, on one end of the spectrum, we have a technical founder with an idea, maybe a patent working on their own. On the other, we have maybe a 15, 20 person company who's won some of the SBIR, the formal funding opportunities. Where in the spectrum would you recommend that someone really try to reach out and leverage the lab resources? Because to clarify for everyone else, these resources here, these are not the SBIR or STTR programs. We're not talking about the general funded, cash awards for research and development. We're talking about, test and evaluation resources, access to experts. So Joe, with your experience, where is the ideal development kind of alignment to where a startup founder can reach out to access some of these resources?
Well, I don't see a boundary to that. I mean, you could, if you're more on the business side of things and you want to start a company and you don't have any technology, you could find that technology key piece at the lab and start there, so from the very beginning. And then if you've got a 20-person company, or, you know, Steve from SLAC was talking about, he worked with, you know, big oil, right? So at any point during that entire development, I think you can leverage the expertise that's at the lab. I don't see an optimum. I think it's always there.
Got it. And what does that look like? I think when you were talking earlier, you mentioned like the kind of the human element to working with the lab. Can you expand a little bit, you know, when you actually get one level deeper, you know, there's some sort of, hey, we think there's a general alignment. What does the process then look like to connect with some of the humans at the lab? You know, what types of people can a startup expect to be talking to? You know, and and you could highlight maybe from your experience, what are some of the formal opportunities, you know, like a CRADA that are really, or tech licensing that are available?
Right. So I think, you know, I've kind of used my internal connections to connect to Sandia. So my experience might be a little bit different than somebody who just sees the lab as kind of a you know, an open door, but they don't know where to start. I think I was really excited to listen to Marcos a couple minutes ago, because I had never heard of the labpartnering.org website. And that was exactly what I was looking for. You know, where's the clearinghouse where I can type in a technology and it pops up with patents and researchers and facilities? And I thought that was kind of a pipe dream, but apparently it exists. So I'm so excited to go try that out as soon as this webinar is over. And my feeling is that once you do that, you're going to get routed to some individual labs and probably their business development people, who are then going possibly screen you, but at the end of the day, you're going to end up with somebody technical. And that somebody technical is actually working on what you're interested in. And hopefully from there, you'll have a good conversation and figure out if there's a fit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you shared there is so important with accessing the labs. And even I'll share with everyone else too, at FedTech, we work with a lot of government agencies in the national security space. And what you may have, you know, 5-10 years ago, you may have expected that online landing page, you submit something, oh, I'll never hear back. Oh, maybe the website doesn't load. There's actually a pretty nice, you know, transition like happening right now in 2020, 2021, where there are a lot of people behind that. There are humans that want to answer your question. All the people you're hearing from today from the labs, they are on the other end of that and they're actively wanting to speak with you. So definitely now is one of the best times to work with the federal government. We hosted another speaker previously. You talked about that in the DOE labs. Joe, I'll finish kind of just with one final question here. You know, what are some of the non-intuitive things that are available in the labs? Because you have a really great insider perspective on it. You know, I understand the obvious stuff, test and evaluation equipment, maybe some feedback from experts. I can license some cool technologies. What are some of the between the line resources that, you know, on a human level, a startup can expect to get out of engaging with a Department of Energy lab?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess the first thing that pops into my mind would be something also that Steve said is the objectivity and the earnestness. So you are going to get people who are really smart and know what they're doing and want to help you. You know, people who work at the lab are doing that for a purpose. They're not, most people are not just doing it for a job. They're doing it because they want to help out. They want to give back, you know, support the country, whatever it is. And so I think that comes through, and sort of this, you know, men in black, we're the government, we're here to help kind of thing. That there's a little bit of truth to that. So I think that's what you're going to get, kind of that human side is good know-how, earnestness, objectivity.
Awesome. Cool. Joe, thanks so much for talking with me here in front of a few hundred people. And I'll just reiterate that last point you made. You know, we're working with a lot of the humans, again, on the LINC side, all the 4 labs and at the DOE. And you're exactly right. Everybody is so mission driven, right? They're going to go out of their way to help you as a startup or an industry. They're not just going to, you know, be picking up the phone 9 to 5. So it is really a great untapped resource for deep tech startups. So thanks for sharing that. And with that, I'll pass it back to Lindsay here to introduce some of the reverse pitches.
Yes, thank you, Will. Thank you, Joe. Really insightful, and we appreciate you taking the time with us. And now I'd like to move on into what we're calling our reverse pick section of the day. So, you know, we know that there's a lot of startups in the crowd tonight. And if there's one thing that startups, businesses, everybody knows, and you do it all the time, and that is a pitch. And you pitch to investors, to anybody and everybody. The pitch is your baby, and we know that you know that. So we decided with the Lab Innovation Networking Center to flip that upside down and do reverse pitches. So this next segment of the program, you're going to hear a reverse pitch from each of the 4 LINC labs. During that reverse pitch, they're going to sell you, the industry, about why you should work with them and what their facilities have to offer. So really exciting, really excited about it. And don't forget, you can ask the questions directly to these reverse pitchers via that Q&A at the bottom. Don't use the chat, use the Q&A at the bottom. That's what we're monitoring. That's what we'll be able to see. So that being said, it is time to kick off our reverse pitch section with Dr. Noelle Bakhtian. She's the founding executive director of the Berkeley Lab Energy Storage Center, and she's very excited to be here. So Noelle, I don't want to take up any more time. You have a long introduction, done many great things, but I want to kick it over to you so you have as much time as possible for your reverse pitch. So take it away.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Well, I started standing up the Berkeley Lab Energy Storage Center in November, and I'm really excited to be here to show you what we're about. So Berkeley Lab actually has, technical issues. Berkeley Lab actually has an incredibly rich history in energy storage starting in the 1950s. In fact, Berkeley Lab is the birthplace of lithium battery electrochemistry. But fast forward to today, our energy storage portfolio is to the point where the lab actually announced this new center to harness and accelerate the incredible work that we have going on. Energy storage work spans most of our divisions, as you can see on the right. So one benefit of having this center is that the stakeholders, you all, have a single stop shop to figure out what kind of storage partnership opportunities really make sense for you. So over the next few slides, I'm going to give you a sense of the breadth and depth of our energy storage expertise and capabilities. First off, we've got a really rich expertise in materials, which we apply to different types of energy storage. So let's start in the battery space. To provide you with some scale, we have about 150 staff in a single division, for instance, which concentrates on energy storage and distributed resources. And if you couple that with our materials division and other brilliant researchers across the lab dedicated to battery research, backstopped by hundreds of millions of dollar user facilities, it's really an incredible opportunity for folks. So where we really excel is new material discovery and synthesis, including a computational approach to new materials and advanced characterization, combined with modeling at the atomic and microstructure scale. We also specialize in testing scalable processing techniques. Speaking of materials, in the thermal energy storage space, we're engineering new materials for very high temperatures, thousands of degrees Celsius, hotter than lava, which could help address the humongous needs of the industrial sector. As you all probably know, industry actually uses 1/3 of all the energy in the United States, and mostly in the form of heat. One of the companies we're working with in this space is Antora Energy, which is a cyclotron road and ARPA-E company, and they've broken some world records for their work. We've also got an entire department looking at materials for thermal energy for the building sector, another 1/3 of US energy use, where heating and cooling are the dominant loads. Now let's talk about another area of expertise for the lab, which is subsurface. We've been working on subsurface thermal energy storage since the 70s. We think of it as using the earth as a battery, where you can take the cold of winter or the warm of summer, or even excess electricity to pump hot or cold water deep underground and store it there until it's needed. On the mechanical energy storage side, we're also working on compressed gas energy storage at grid scale, specifically looking at porous media, which opens up a lot of new geographies for this type of technology. And recognizing that the battery demand in the US is going to keep spiking and that most of our lithium does come from abroad, we have a whole team named LIRIC that's working to establish national leadership in the lithium cycle. There's a lot of California interest here, including a set of our partners that have pitched this concept of Lithium Valley, which is a play on Silicon Valley, but based in the Salton Sea in California, which is really ripe for lithium capture. In fact, we've got 2 current projects with Berkshire Hathaway in this space, funded by California and also DOE. Another major focus area for us is hydrogen. We work across making hydrogen, storing hydrogen, and using hydrogen. And we have leadership roles in all 4 of the DOE hydrogen consortia. So across the board, we're working from fundamental chemistry and materials to techno-economic assessments, all with an end goal of H2 at scale. And we're working at the very cutting edge of new ways to store and transport hydrogen, including adsorbents, hydrides, and carriers. In the chemical energy space, we specialize in innovative flow battery technologies, new chemistries for low cost, high power, and long duration. And finally, I want to hit on our team of about 170 folks that focus on analysis and tools that support investments, planning, regulation, policy for customers like you. And we also get called on quite a lot by DOE, by the ISOs, by the POCs to look at everything from the techno-economics of a new technology to grid system modeling and valuation to customer economic assessments, domestic and global. So that's the expertise and capabilities that you can draw upon. And here's some different options for how to plug into the labs to accelerate your research to deployment. Let's see. Oh shoot, Lindsay, it looks like we're missing the...
Oh, I think it's right coming up next. Go ahead and click one more and it should be the next one up. There we go.
There we go. That's the expertise and capabilities you can draw upon, but here's some different options for how to plug into the labs to accelerate your research to deployment. And you're gonna get a copy of this after the event. But we can do everything from preliminary meetings and ideation to get some free technical advice, to testing samples for you, which could help validate your research, to accessing $100 million user facilities, which could be free in some instances, to collaborations and co-development of technology and joint proposals for federal or state funding. There's also potential, as you heard, to license Berkeley Lab intellectual property or embed your employees or your company at the lab as an affiliate or through our tech accelerator, Cyclotron Road. And one more opportunity to seriously consider, 3 of the labs that you're going to hear from today, including Berkeley Lab, have a special energy storage consortium that provides our industry members with access to a streamlined contractual mechanism to engage the 3 labs. So Google CalCharge and check us out. And I'll just end by saying, you've got world-class experts and capabilities on your doorstep. We've got hundreds of people at the lab who are really ready and excited to collaborate to bring your transformational ideas to life. So if you're interested in setting up a meeting regarding partnering, just fill out this 30-second form that you see at the top. And I'm also going to put it into the chat. I just put it into the chat. And my contact info is here as well if you have any further questions. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Noel. Great job on the reverse pitch. I know I want to partner with the Berkeley Energy Storage Center. So the last question that I have for you, we only have time for one question. I know a lot of folks have tried engaging with the labs before and maybe be a little bit hesitant. So what happens when they actually click that tiny URL and they fill out that form? What happens? Who does that go to?
That's a great question. As soon as you click enter on that form, I get an email in my inbox that says you've got a new interest. And so I go there and I read what you wrote about your company and I find people to speak with you about potential partnership opportunities. And then I'll email you within a few days and we'll set that first meeting up.
Perfect, perfect. That is the one that I want to end on because I think that's going to provide some great value for a lot of our folks. We see the chat questions coming in. So fill out that form. That is step number 1. But thank you, Noel, so much for presenting for your reverse pitch. We greatly appreciate your time here today. Great. And now we're going to head over and meet Dr. Paul Wielander. He's a staff scientist at SLAC. And Paul here is going to present his reverse pitch as well. So Paul, take it away.
Great. Thank you very much, Lindsay. And thank you to everyone out there in the audience who has joined today. I'm excited to be here and talk to you a little bit about quantum information science at SLAC. So let me just advance. So I want to start off with just sort of a broad overview of various quantum research activities at SLAC. So first of all, we're working in quantum sensors where we're using quantum limited detectors and amplifiers to detect dark matter and observe traces of the ancient cosmos. We have research efforts in networks where we're developing transducers to connect various quantum modalities geared towards distributed sensing, computing, and communications. We have strong efforts in device fabrication where we're looking to develop next generation quantum device architectures and manufacturing processes and move towards hybrid devices where we interleave some of the different technologies. We have efforts in quantum simulation, where we're modeling complex chemical and biological systems, as well as new quantum device architectures. We have a long history in materials, material science, investigating and designing exotic materials at the atomic scale, novel heterostructures, investigating correlated electronic behavior. And finally, we have a whole suite of characterization tools where we're utilizing photon and electron probes to study quantum devices and materials, but also building new quantum probes to complement those existing capabilities. So this has recently, these efforts have taken off quite a bit over the last few years. Recently, we were selected as one of 5 national QIS research centers. So this is an effort funded by the Department of Energy. We are part of QNext, jointly organized by SLAC and Argonne, with funding of over $100 million over the next 5 years, provided by the Department of Energy. But really a partnership between the labs, universities, and industry, bringing all 3 together to really form an integrated and coordinated effort geared towards next generation quantum systems. The focus of QNext, first and foremost, is to develop some national foundries at SLAC and at Argonne. At SLAC, that will take the form of a superconducting quantum device foundry. But the overall focus of the center is to develop quantum interconnects and to demonstrate communication links, networks of sensors, but also the underlying simulations and simulation test beds for modeling and developing future architecture. So it's really a nationwide integrated research effort bringing together labs, academia, and industry. So why QIS at SLAC? Well, you've heard a lot about sort of general reasons why you might want to partner with labs, but specifically QIS and specifically SLAC. As I've mentioned, we have a number of programs that are really just taking off over the last several years, bringing in significant investment from the Department of Energy. SLAC itself is also investing heavily in this area, building new clean rooms, new lab spaces to enable such QIS R&D efforts, and really has the expertise in place to build and cultivate new QIS programs. As Steve mentioned earlier, we are part of Stanford University, and with that, we have great coordination with various faculty. We have also jointly launched between SLAC and Stanford a QFarm initiative, bringing together faculty and staff from both institutions to enable greater collaboration. So partnering with SLAC, you also bring in the expertise from faculty at Stanford. And underlying all of this, SLAC hosts a number of DOE user facilities, which bring scientists to SLAC from all around the world to study cutting edge research. And so we can really leverage a lot of that expertise and a lot of that worldwide knowledge to new problems in quantum information science. So what kind of opportunities do I see out there? So I mentioned at the very top some of the research areas where SLAC is working, these quantum technologies, looking at new applications and new types of quantum technologies. But I also really want to emphasize here that even if your business is not specifically working on quantum itself, there are a whole host of enabling technologies that we require. So, things like cryogenics, ultra high vacuum systems, lasers and optical components, microwave hardware, electronics for quantum control and readout of these quantum circuits. All of these and many others are absolutely critical, and development in those areas is crucial to furthering development of quantum technologies as well. So really want to highlight that it's not just the quantum focus, it's all of these underlying technologies that provide a solid foundation for those advancements. So I will wrap. Am I advancing? There we go. So please visit our website, qis.slac.stanford.edu. Fill out the contact form, reach out, let's start a conversation. Lots of these efforts at SLAC are just taking off. We're looking for new partners, new industrial partners across a lot of areas in quantum. So please reach out. And of course, if you want to learn more about partnerships in general, there's also a link there. So with that, I will conclude and take any of your questions.
Thanks, Paul. We appreciate it. You've heard it here from a staff scientist directly wants to partner with everybody at home. So Paul, the question that came in, and I think this is really important and relates to your presentation. So how do folks know if they have an enabling technology?
Oh, that's a great question. Reach out and ask. Simple, straightforward. I listed sort of a handful there. I come from a superconducting device background, so my selections were perhaps a little biased, but there are a whole bunch of different quantum technologies. I didn't mention things like software, circuit design, modeling software. It's vast, but reach out and ask.
Step one, reach out and ask. That seems to be the theme for today. So Paul, thank you so much for joining us. And I know it's a little bit outside the lab and outside your comfort zone doing this reverse pitch. So I know I appreciate it and everybody at home appreciates it too.
Hey, it was a lot of fun. Thank you for the opportunity. Cheers.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheers indeed. I'm on the East Coast, so happy hour starts soon. My West Coast friends will have to wait a little bit longer for happy hour. So next up, it's Dr. Simon Pang. He's a staff scientist in the Material Science Division at Lawrence Livermore National Lab. He's going to be discussing a non-intuitive angle for partnering. So his team wrote a Getting to Neutral report, and it talks about adjacent technologies and really how California can get to carbon neutral. They're recently awarded the DOE Secretary Achievement Award for their groundbreaking work. So he's going to talk about how you can use that report and how it's going to lead to some non-intuitive ways to work with the lab. So Simon, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for that kind introduction. So I'm happy to talk to all of you today about this report that we released about a year ago about how California can become carbon neutral, what this report might mean for you, and how you can leverage Livermore's resources and knowledge. And of course, as Rich mentioned earlier, our work in the carbon space is just one of the many mission areas that we work in at the lab. Our report involved a large team of scientists and analysts at Lawrence Livermore National Lab with expertise in a wide variety of areas, as well as some external collaborators. As I mentioned, the goal of our report was to understand how California can become carbon neutral by 2045. This was a goal set out by our former Governor Brown through an executive order in 2018. Being carbon neutral means that we've balanced our carbon checkbook. Any carbon dioxide that we put into the atmosphere also needs to come back out and be put into permanent storage. The best way we can approach neutrality is by reducing our emissions, by electrifying as much as we can, deploying renewables, and attempting to decarbonize as much of industry as possible. Still, we expect that there will be some residual emissions, which means that to become carbon neutral, we will need technologies to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. These types of technologies are termed negative emissions technologies. We estimate that we will need approximately 125 million metric tons of carbon dioxide removal from the atmosphere by these negative emission technologies to account for our residual emissions in 2045. Of course, these technologies won't all be deployed at once, so this implies that there will be a growing market for negative emissions technologies within the state, starting as soon as possible and continuing until and likely past 2045. So what are the benefits of participating in this market? Well, California has a unique incentive system for generating carbon credits called the Low Carbon Fuel Standard that some of you may be familiar with. I'm going to oversimplify here, but essentially we have in place carbon regulations that become more strict over time. If you do better than those regulations, you get credits that you can sell on a free market to companies that aren't meeting standards. Recently, these credits have been trading for about $200 per ton of CO2. If applied to the total amount of required negative emissions in 2045, this represents a roughly $25 billion industry. These credits are also in addition to the 45Q federal tax credit for carbon sequestration, which can provide up to an additional $50 per ton of CO2. So just as an example, we found that if you take waste biomass sources, process them into renewable hydrogen and permanently sequester the carbon dioxide that comes off of this process, you can actually give away the hydrogen for free to the fuel cell market and still make a profit off of the carbon credits at today's LCFS credit prices. That's really how valuable the LCFS can be. So how can you partner with Lawrence Livermore National Lab to take part in California's negative emissions industry? Well, as I mentioned, we have expertise in all of the technological areas that we outlined in the report. These include things like natural solutions, harnessing the power of forests and soils to understand how these ecosystems naturally store and release carbon, to things like engineered solutions, like the example I gave just now, taking waste biomass, converting it into electricity, hydrogen, or fuels, and permanently and safely storing the CO2. These solutions actually also have the co-benefit of reducing wildfire risk, which is a message that state policymakers have greatly appreciated. Or my main expertise in the middle here, direct air capture, where CO2 is taken directly from the atmosphere and concentrated before permanently storing it. In addition to the state level incentives like the LCFS for deploying negative emissions technologies, there are many federal opportunities for developing technologies that are in addition to the SBIR and STTR opportunities that you're already familiar with. At Livermore, we work not only with universities on developing the science and technology for these technologies, but we also work with startups, small businesses, large companies, to leverage our experience and knowledge in various technology areas to go after these federal funding opportunities. These partnerships typically occur through a cooperative research and development agreement, or CRADA, where we can help you develop your technologies either just in an advisory role or by directly participating in the research and assisting with development and testing. To give two relevant and current examples, the Department of Energy is currently offering $15 million in funding for direct air capture research and $40 million in funding for low and zero carbon hydrogen production research. One of the things that we do at Livermore is really to keep a pulse on these opportunities and upcoming opportunities in the negative emissions technology space. And we've had quite a bit of success working with commercial partners to put together winning proposals. I'll end this here just by saying, if you want to learn more about our report, you can find it by Googling Getting to Neutral. And I think the link has also been posted in the chat. And if you're interested in discussing opportunities for partnering, please contact our Innovation and Partnerships Office. Thanks, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thanks, Simon. Great job. A new way to think about how the labs can be used in using this report. So, that's clear that California is headed that way, wanting to get to neutral. So how does the report demonstrate the emerging market for technologies? That's what everybody at home is wondering. Okay, where is this growing market and how does the report demonstrate that?
Yeah, so really it's in this development of these negative emissions that the state is going to need to be able to reach neutrality. So we'll need a wide variety of technologies to participate within that negative emissions space.
Great, thanks, Simon. Again, we'll make sure that that is posted in the chat. If it's not already there, it will be. And of course, that will be on your resource guide that you will get at the end. But Simon, thanks for taking the time to step out of the lab and reverse pitch to all these industry folks. We appreciate it.
Yeah, great, thanks. It was fun to do.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. So now we get to meet Dr. Rick Muller from Sandia National Laboratories. He's the Senior Manager of the Advanced Microsystems Group. Rick, please tell us more about quantum.
Thank you very much, Lindsay, and thanks to everyone for giving me the opportunity to tell you a little bit about what we're doing at Sandia and with some of our partners in quantum information sciences. So quantum's been in the news a bit lately because of its potential to impact US national or problems of importance to US national interests. Let's see, I don't seem to be advancing. Okay, so at some point in the future, we believe that quantum devices will be able to solve incredibly hard problems like breaking cryptographic systems that we thought were unbreakable and solving key problems in pharmaceutical or in materials design that we thought were impossible to solve. More in the near term, we think that quantum devices will be able to enable provably secure communication protocols and develop dramatically improved sensing capabilities. And so because of these applications, quantum has been growing rapidly over the last 20, 25 years by any measure you want to look at. And so the chart here shows publications, but that's kind of a proxy for funding or patents or anything else. So Sandia has a quantum computing program that's almost 20 years old now. We've developed working quantum systems in trapped ion, semiconductor, trapped atoms, and some other technologies. And some of our kind of publicly visible capabilities is that we have an IARPA-funded ion trap foundry where we fabricate surface ion traps and distribute them to research groups and industries all around the world. And the Quantum Scientific Computing Open User Testbed, or QSCOUT, which is a trapped ion testbed that's based on some of these technologies that's one of the 2 DOE Oscar-funded capabilities to provide quantum computers for DOE researchers. Along with the device and applications capabilities, we've developed a suite of abilities for quantum assessment, benchmarking, and resource estimation to understand how these capabilities can be used. So in addition to computing, we've developed key technologies in sensing and communication. These are sensors that give very accurate position, navigation, and timing sensing, or electric and magnetic field sensing that use trapped atom or diamond defect technology. And we've similarly developed communications and transduction capabilities to network quantum computers with each other and to network sensors with each other. So recently exciting news along the same lines of what we just heard about from SLAC is that Sandia co-leads another one of the 5 DOE-funded National Quantum Information Science Research Centers with Lawrence Berkeley Labs, who we heard from Horst earlier talking about quantum, and from Noel. We have a great relationship with Lawrence Berkeley and with the other partners in this center. Relevant to this current audience, one of the mandates of these centers is to nurture and grow the quantum ecosystem. And I think it's the Department of Energy's belief that, that we're not going to develop the quantum revolution if it's just a few national laboratories and a few big industry partners. We need industrial people, university researchers at every single level of the ecosystem. And we are urged and required to help develop that ecosystem. So it is part of our mission, and it's something that we're very interested in doing, you know, for selfish reasons as well. You know, there are critical breakthroughs that will be made in enabling technologies and in other areas by companies that haven't been founded yet. And so we'd like to work with those companies. So how do you work with us? So we have an email address, emailquantum@sandia.gov, to reach our quantum information science team. We are happy to schedule short meetings with your teams to discuss collaboration areas and to connect you to local expertise here, either here or in the broader quantum systems accelerator community. Other opportunities that will be coming up in the future include things like the next open calls for QSCOUT testbed time. And we're planning through the QSA to have industry days to report our own progress through the center, as well as to listen to what industry needs from breakthroughs or from technology transfer opportunities. And so with that, I thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate the deep dive into Sandia's quantum information systems. Thank you. So I want to know, and I'm sure that everybody else wants to know, I'm assuming everyone wants to know my question as well, but what's an example of a company that's worked with you and worked with Sandia before? So give us a specific example of a company that has worked there.
So one nice example is with Cold Quanta, which is a Boulder area company. And Cold Quanta has developed vacuum platforms that we use in our ion trap technology. So we ship our ion traps to them, and they build a vacuum platform around that. And they've then been able to turn around and sell that platform to other researchers at places like Duke and University of Maryland, who can license the traps from us and get stood up very rapidly with a state-of-the-art capability in trapped ion research. And so we're very happy to have that relationship with Cold Quanta and would welcome opportunities with other partners as well.
Fantastic, Rick. Thank you so much for joining us and for presenting your reverse pitch. Of course, everybody at home, you see the email, you see the link. So be sure to contact Rick and his team if you have an opportunity to partner and if you're interested. But Rick, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you, Lindsay, and thanks everyone.
Fantastic. Okay, now we are moving on to our Q&A portion of the event. So we have just about 15 to 20 minutes or so, and this portion is specifically for you guys at home to ask your specific questions for our panel of technology transfer officials. So just a quick reminder here, what do you want to know? We see those questions coming in. We have a few of them written down that we're going to address verbally, but feel free to add more questions now. As you see folks have questions that you also want to have answered, upvote them. Hit the thumbs up button right at the top so you can keep getting them to the top of our queue. So go ahead and put your questions in and click send. And then let's meet our panel of folks. So we have Renee Sells from Sandia. Richard Rankin is going to come back on from Lawrence Livermore. We have Dr. Steve Eglash, Dr. Todd Prey, the Chief Strategic Partnerships Officer from Berkeley Lab, and of course, Mary Monson, the Tech Partnerships and Business Development from Sandia. So this great panel here is going to be answering all of your questions. And let's get started with that panel. I'll stop my share so we can see everybody's face bigger. Hello, panel. How are we feeling today? We're excited to answer some questions.
We're looking forward to it. Thanks, Lindsay.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so the one that we saw come in pretty regularly, and I'm going to throw this to Mary first. You're going to be on the hot seat. So folks want to know via LINC and via all these mechanisms that they're hearing today, is that different than the SBIR STTRs, or is that the same? And can you kind of walk everybody through what those differences are?
Well, so LINC is as has been communicated, an open door to not only the 4 labs who have a presence in the Bay Area, but also to the entirety of the DOE labs. And so the many things you've heard about today from Marcos and others about various opportunities to partner and to receive funding for the laboratory PIs to work with you, all that is available through LINC, access to intellectual property, et cetera. You heard about lab partnering service as well. So SBIRs, that's a whole, that is a way to build long-term relationships with the national labs. And we certainly encourage small businesses to reach out early in the application process and learn as much as possible about the capabilities and the subcontracting process. It turns out that DOE's next call is March 1st. So anyone listening will have an opportunity to apply for that opportunity.
Great, thanks, Mary. So I want to move now to Richard. What are some common misconceptions that you hear and you've heard throughout the career that you hear industry say that they might just not know, but what are the misconceptions that are pretty regularly, and can we talk about them and address some of them? Oh, and you're on mute. Technically, just so everybody at home, if somebody starts speaking and they don't come off mute, that has to happen every virtual event regardless. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't count as a virtual event. Richard, are you there with us?
I think I am. Have been the whole time, yeah. Some of the misconceptions that I think we hear frequently is that the national labs do secret work and can't be connected with the outside world is a fairly common misconception, when in fact, as one heard earlier, not only can we, but we're required to connect with the public. And as I said in my earlier comments, at least for some of us, it's absolutely necessary for us to do that, to be able to get the widest range of good ideas, good partners, and good results in our national security or energy or other programs. So that, I think that's one. There are, several others. For example, we can only work in very, very strict ways when we have a wide variety of things that we can do, ranging from things like CRADAs that were already mentioned to commercial type licenses to a program called ACT, which allows us to tailor terms and conditions for whatever's necessary to a wide variety of things. That also helps the speed of execution. Those are a couple.
No, those are great. Thank you. So I'm going to move to Todd now. So Todd, this question comes from Indu, who's in the audience today. And they'd like to know, what are typical IP licensing costs from DOE labs and style? Exclusive, non-exclusive, are they allowed? So can you speak a little bit about licensing with labs and that process?
Yeah, certainly. It's actually very flexible. You know, if you want to license technology that the lab has already developed, all the labs will negotiate in good faith, you know, and come to reasonable terms. We're actually easier to work with in this regard than I think a lot of universities, where they may have more of a profit motive behind licensing technologies to industry. And when you collaborate with the labs, you have very clear rights to any intellectual property that's developed, from either the ability to elect title to inventions that are made, as well as negotiating exclusive licenses or having the first option to do so. So it's very flexible. You know, we're not profit driven like a lot of other organizations are. And we really have a mission to get the technology out into the market, as you've heard a lot about today.
Great, thanks, Todd. I have a question now for Steve, and I saw it come through for somebody here, but I don't see the name, but that's okay. So Steve, how does the lab set priorities? So for you guys, and you're going through, you know, your research break, but how do you set priorities at a very high level?
Well, at the highest level, the labs all have a mission that they're responsible for executing on behalf of the Department of Energy, the federal government, and the nation. But bringing that down to something a little more practical, we're driven internally by the interests of our scientists. We tend to be very bottoms up and entrepreneurial. When we engage with companies, there's really a two-way dialogue. We listen to what the company's problems and opportunities are, and that can inspire our research. We share our innovations and new science with the companies, and that can hopefully allow them to discover new impactful ways of taking what we're doing in the labs and touching thousands, millions, or billions of people. When it actually comes down to a discussion with a particular company about their particular interests, we look for overlap between their interests and our interests, and that's generally quite easy to find.
Fantastic. Easy to find, but still takes a lot of work from the high level to figure out what those priorities are and as you go through them. So I want to shift even bigger now. We're talking about the US, and let's go to a big global scale. This question came from a few people, and I'm going to actually throw this to the group. So whoever wants to answer, go ahead and chime in. But what opportunities are there for folks outside of the US to engage with the national labs?
I can open with a comment. You know, science doesn't necessarily have boundaries. So I think all of the labs have a desire and a need to interact with similar institutions with similar interests, as long as they are aligned with our national interests across the world. So I think most, if not all, of the labs partner with institutions, universities, and companies across the planet. And that's a benefit to us, again, in obtaining best and brightest kinds of partners.
Yeah, I agree with Richard. I think that while the federal government and the labs have a desire to help U.S. competitiveness, we also realize that science, technologies, businesses, supply chains are worldwide, and we work with companies worldwide, particularly when we talk about the sorts of collaborative research activities that we're focusing on today. When it comes to the national labs user facilities, things like our big X-ray facilities and other things, those are available to companies worldwide through a normal process for vetting and reviewing applications.
Great. And I'd like to now ask Renee a question. And this one, I'll admit, is a plant question that I wanted to ask you. So yes, we have more questions from the audience, but occasionally I want to throw in my own. And one of the big advantages of the Lab Innovation Networking Center is an NDA that applies to all 4 of the labs. So it's, you know, really cutting down paperwork. So can you provide some further detail about what that means and what that protects for folks that want to engage with all 4 labs at once?
Right, exactly. So like we mentioned in the intro and all day today, you know, we want to, you got a lot of links and sort of different pathways to talk to folks, but LINC, you know, it's one door for the 4 national labs. And so if an industry partner wants to talk with us, share with us what they're doing, they might want to protect it, right? So an NDA stands for non-disclosure agreement, and they may feel better once that's signed that whatever they share is going to be protected. And so what we've done, you know, there's 4 main institutions, right? We all have our different versions of NDAs. But under LINC, we have a LINC NDA that includes all of the 4 national laboratories. So it's a starting point for an industry partner to come. We can sign that, and we can have that discussion in a way that the industry partner feels protected. So it's just a first step to uncovering what they need. And then we, you know, actual people can help find the resources and direct them to the appropriate places across the, you know, our 4 labs.
Great. And yes, info@bayarealabs.org. We'll make sure we put that in so everybody can reach out and email if you're interested in hearing more about that NDA. So Mary, I have a question here from Dave, specifically wants to know about CRADAs. And he says, traditionally, small business with whom national labs collaborate do not get clear ownership of the IP developed. Have CRADA policies changed recently to benefit small businesses?
Well, the CRADA is set up for the CRADA partner to have a license up to exclusive to, you know, any IP that's developed under the CRADA. And we do work very hard to be small business friendly. In fact, at Sandia, you know, more than 30% of our partnerships are with small business. And many of these programs are quite helpful that we're seeing now. The COVID Tech Assist program, Sandia is currently making about 70% of our IP portfolio available to US organizations for free through the end of June. And that's another, you know, thing that is small business friendly as well. So we do work hard to accommodate the needs of small business. CRADAs can be intimidating.
Yes, and I want to go now to Todd, and I have a question for you. And I'm honestly surprised that this question in particular took this long to come about, because we know that small businesses in the audience, and at the end of the day, it's all about funds and it's all about money, right? So Isabella would like to know, are there any additional funds to work with the national labs outside of SIVERS?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a whole variety of other funding opportunity announcements. The shorthand we use is FOA, F-O-A. If you're interested in different technology areas, I think, you know, Berkeley Lab, any of the labs would be interested to talk with you about a couple options. One is we can jointly apply for funding. So we can develop a project together. You get funding to support your work, and then the lab also gets resources to support your objectives in that. There are also the Technology Commercialization Fund program that I mentioned. While that doesn't allow for funding going to the company, it funds the lab to work on your behalf. And there are also several directed funding opportunities that come out of a number of the program offices in the EERE office of DOE, where there's funding available for both the lab and the companies to work on targeted projects. So, and these are just a few of the options. And the state of California also has funding for companies to work at the lab. So just get in touch and we can walk you through several different variations on this theme.
Great, thanks, Todd. Okay, so this question came up a few different ways from a couple different people here. And I think that I'm going to ask it to the large group so that no one is mad at me for directly pointing it to you. So people want to know about speed. You know, sometimes it takes a little bit of long time to negotiate or whatever, but tell me about the speed of things so folks can know as they're talking to labs and engaging with labs, what that timeline may look like in a couple different scenarios. So I'll throw that to the group to answer, whoever would like to first.
I'll be happy to get that started, Lindsay. The length of time required to start a collaboration depends on the particular structure and vehicle used. It can take as long as a few months for the more elaborate structures that require review, but realizing that there's often a need to do things in a more agile way, the DOE has also established for its national labs some contracting options that can be approved locally, provided that the total cost is below a certain limit and that the terms are standard and the form isn't modified. So we're trying both to speed up the ones that require a more elaborate and deliberate approach, as well as having faster options.
Lindsay, I'd like to just add to that. So DOE has been on a path to implement regulatory reform in this area. One of the key reforms is something called Master Scope of Work, which is meaningful to us, but probably not to the folks watching. But what it allows is a very quick turnaround. So at Sandia, we have been able to turn around some CRADA agreements in, you know, a matter of a day to, you know, a couple of weeks. And we're looking at doing more and more of our agreements that way, because, you know, the speed of business doesn't wait months. So that's been a great reform that many of the labs have taken advantage of. And I think at least a couple of us here on the call.
Fantastic, thanks. We have time for just one last question here, and I'm gonna throw this one to the panel again, so you guys can answer as you will. So Teresa wants to know specific examples of partnership from first contact to the challenges that were encountered to getting started, and what details led to success for you as the lab and from the company perspective, or what specifically got in the way of success? How are they successful? Just kind of, I think they want to know about the journey from start to finish. So that's going to be our last question of the panel today. So I will throw it to the group to see who would like to speak to that journey from a small business.
I'll offer a couple comments, not the whole journey, but some key factors I think for us is that the interests are aligned, that we have a project and or staff that's both fits within the capabilities of the laboratory, but also, if you will, strikes the fancy of our research team. Things move a lot quicker if that is the case. And then as far as you know, things that will speed things along, there's recognition that there are some things that we can negotiate and change, and there are a few things that are a matter of law and we can't, and spending a lot of time on those is usually not fruitful. Others?
Anyone else want to add?
Come on.
I would add a comment aligned with the first thing that Richard said, that understanding up front what are the technical goals that the company and the lab are trying to achieve is as important as it would be in any collaborative relationship, whether it's between a company and a lab, two companies, or a company and a vendor. And when we undertake the effort up front, as Richard said, to really have alignment of expectations and goals, and really have the necessary commitments on both sides, extraordinary things can happen.
Extraordinary things can happen. I think, Steve, that is the most perfect word and way to end this panel and this Q&A session. So Todd, Steve, Richard, Mary, Renee, thank you guys so much for providing insight. We see that there's a lot of questions still in the chat. The best way to go and get those questions answered is, of course, to engage in the lab, and you're going to get that resource guide here shortly. So everyone, thank you so much for joining our panel today. Great. And so now as we wrap today's show, like we said, we're going to have that resource guide for you coming up very shortly. And of course, I have to ask Renee, what's the best way to get in touch with LINC?
Right. So thank you so much, Lindsay. And thanks to FedTech for facilitating this discussion today. It was really great. So right here, you'll see a link. I know you've seen a lot of links in the chat, but again, there's 4 tech transfer professionals behind that link. We want to help. We want to hear your problems. And so we will get back to you. And so I just want to thank everyone for their time today. I hope this is just the starting point for continued networking and dialogue on potential partnerships. We want to hear your feedback. This helps us with ongoing events like this one. We have another one slated for early summer. So please reach out. We want to get back to you. We want to hear from you. So thanks again for your time, and until next time.
Yes, thanks, Renee. One more thing to add, make sure you put in the survey. There's a survey link, so make sure you fill out that survey because this is the first of many events for the Lab Innovation Networking Center. So please make sure you fill out that survey link so we can know what you want to hear about next and do that deep dive for our next event. So fill out that survey. It will come to you in an email. All of the session will be recorded and will be available for you via link. So info@bayarealabs.org, as Renee mentioned, and bayarealabs.org. On behalf of the entire FedTech team and the Lab Innovation Networking team and the U.S. Department of Energy, we thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us and wish you a very, very pleasant rest of your day. Thanks again.